HOA president called SWAT on my cabin, so I blocked their only road out overnight. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, we would like to ask you for one small favor. Please subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you will not miss any of our latest videos. It only takes a moment, costs nothing, and is one of the best ways to help us continue creating powerful, emotional, and dramatic stories like this one. Your support means more to us than you can imagine. Also, let us know where you are watching from today. Share your city or country in the comments below. Thank you so much. Now, let us return to our main character. People think a locked door is what keeps them safe. They forget the road outside matters more. The first spotlight hit my bedroom wall at 4:17 in the morning. It moved across the pine boards in a hard white circle, passed over the framed photograph of my late wife, then stopped on the old county survey map above the fireplace. A helicopter hovered somewhere beyond the roofline. Its blades hammered the mountain air so hard the glass in my windows rattled. Then the loudspeaker came alive. Daniel Mercer, this is the sheriff's tactical unit. Exit the cabin with your hands visible. For 3 seconds, I did not move. I stood barefoot beside my bed, listening to rain strike the metal roof and boots grind across the gravel outside. Another voice shouted from the tree line, "Do not approach any weapons." That was when an armored vehicle hit my front gate. Steel screamed against steel. The cedar posts my father had set by hand 40 years earlier snapped at the base and disappeared beneath the tires. Gravel sprayed against the porch. The impact shook dust from the ceiling beams and knocked a coffee mug from the kitchen counter. It shattered on the floor. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with wet earth, diesel exhaust, and splintered wood. I raised both hands before anyone entered. The cabin belonged to me. The 48 acres around it belonged to me. The road beneath their armored truck belonged to me. But men carrying rifles rarely ask for deeds before they break down a door. The lock exploded inward. Black uniforms flooded the room. Down! I lowered myself slowly. A gloved hand forced my cheek against the floorboards. Plastic restraints tightened around my wrists. Someone kicked open the bedroom closet. Another officer dragged my father's locked gun cabinet away from the wall. "I'm unarmed," I said. "Where is the hostage?" "What hostage?" "The surveyor." "There is no surveyor here." The officer above me shifted his weight. Outside, through the open doorway, I saw the person who had created all of this. Vanessa Whitmore stood behind the tactical vehicles wearing a cream raincoat over silk pajamas. Her blonde hair was pinned perfectly despite the storm. One hand covered her mouth in rehearsed horror while the other pointed toward my cabin. She looked like a concerned neighbor. She was the president of the Silver Ridge Homeowners Association. My property was not part of Silver Ridge. That fact had bothered her from the day she first saw the lake. "He threatened our people," she called to the sheriff. "He said nobody would leave the mountain alive." I turned my head enough to see the officer nearest me. "I have never said that." "Stay still." They searched everything. The loft, the workshop, the crawl space beneath the kitchen. They opened toolboxes, empty drawers, pulled blankets from the cedar chest, and photographed the hunting rifle my father had registered in 1986. No hostage, no explosives, no barricade plan, no evidence of a crime. Only 40 years of family records, engineering manuals, and muddy boot prints spreading across the floor. At sunrise, Sheriff Nolan removed the restraints himself. His face had lost its color. "We received multiple reports of an armed kidnapping," he said. "From who?" He glanced toward Vanessa. She was already walking back to her white Range Rover. A young deputy approached carrying a red toolbox. "We found this behind the propane shed." I stared at it. The box was clean. Too clean. Rainwater beaded across the lid, but there was no mud beneath it and no rust around the hinges. It had not been there the night before. "What's inside?" I asked. The deputy did not answer. Sheriff Nolan's eyes moved from the toolbox to the security camera mounted beneath my roof. That was the moment Vanessa made her mistake. Not when she called SWAT. Not when she lied about a hostage. Her mistake was assuming I had no record of what happened on my own land. I watched her Range Rover turn downhill and vanish between the pines. Its tires rolled across Mercer Road, the only paved route connecting Silver Ridge to the county highway, the same road her residents used every morning, the same road she believed the HOA controlled, the same road my father had warned me never to sign away. Vanessa thought fear would make me sell the cabin. What she did not know was that before the next sunrise, I would uncover why her entire community had only one road out, and why that road had never belonged to her. My father cut Mercer Road before Silver Ridge existed. Back then, the mountain had no stone entrance, no security patrol, and no rows of identical vacation homes glowing beneath decorative lanterns. There were only pine trees, granite, and a narrow dirt track winding toward a cabin that smelled of cedar smoke and machine oil. Dad bought the land in 1979 after 26 years building bridges across Colorado. He was not sentimental about many things. The cabin was different. He set every foundation stone himself. He framed the walls from Douglas fir cut on the north slope. He carved the front threshold with a hand plane until the wood felt smooth beneath bare feet. When I was 9, he showed me the brass survey markers along the eastern boundary. "Fences can move," he said, tapping one with the heel of his boot. "Paper can disappear. Coordinates don't care who gets angry." I remembered those words while I stood in my living room after the tactical team left. Mud covered the floor. One kitchen cabinet hung from a broken hinge. The front door leaned inward, split around the lock. Rain blew through the opening and carried the smell of wet pine into the room. Beside the fireplace, the photograph of my wife had fallen face down. Claire was laughing in that picture, standing beside the lake with her jeans rolled above her ankles. The glass had cracked across her face during the raid. She had been dead for 4 years. Cancer took her in 7 months and left me with a silent house in Denver, 2 coffee cups I could not bring myself to separate, and a job that suddenly felt like something I had been doing for someone else. I spent 22 years as a licensed civil engineer, designing mountain roads, drainage systems, retaining walls, and emergency access routes. I knew what happened when developers ignored slopes, water, and load limits. Eventually, gravity collected the debt. When Dad died the previous winter, I inherited the cabin, 48 acres of forest, the lake, Mercer Road, and the narrow bridge crossing Miller Creek. I moved in 3 weeks later. I wanted mornings filled with wood smoke instead of traffic. I wanted to repair the cabin with my own hands. Mostly, I wanted to live somewhere that still remembered who I had been before grief turned every room into an echo. For the first month, Silver Ridge left me alone. Then Vanessa Whitmore drove up in her white Range Rover. She parked directly in front of my workshop doors and stepped onto the porch wearing cream-colored boots without a trace of mud on them. "Mr. Mercer," she said, extending a folder. "The HOA would like to discuss an acquisition opportunity." Inside were architectural renderings of a luxury lodge, private docks, rental cabins, and a glass-walled clubhouse built along my lake. My cabin had been erased from every image. "How much land?" I asked. "Only 6 acres. Not for sale." She smiled as if I had misunderstood the purpose of the meeting. "The offer is well above assessed value." No, her gold bracelets clicked when she closed the folder. "Silver Ridge is expanding its recreational footprint. Cooperation would make this easier for everyone." I looked past her toward the road. "Your community already uses enough of my property." Her smile tightened. "Mercer Road is a shared access route." "No. Your developer received temporary construction permission from my father. That permission expired in 2001. For the first time, Vanessa looked down at the gravel beneath her boots. Then she looked back at me. "We'll verify that." 3 days later, the first HOA violation arrived. Unauthorized firewood storage. The next accused me of maintaining an unapproved metal roof. Then came complaints about workshop noise, exterior lighting, lake access, and improper vegetation. None of them applied to my land. I returned every notice by certified mail. Vanessa sent more. By spring, Silver Ridge security vehicles were stopping outside my gate after dark. Survey crews appeared near the lake. Strangers photographed my windows from the road. Every time I challenged them, they claimed Vanessa had granted permission. She was not enforcing rules. She was building a story in which my cabin belonged inside her community. My refusal made me unstable, and every act of resistance became proof that I was dangerous. By the night she sent SWAT, Vanessa had spent 6 months turning paperwork into a weapon. She never realized I had saved every page. Vanessa's next move came disguised as a survey. It was 7:40 on a Thursday morning when I heard engines near the lake. Not one vehicle. 3. The sound carried through the trees before I saw them. Diesel idling, doors slamming, metal stakes clinking inside a truck bed. I followed the noise down the eastern trail with a thermos in one hand and my phone recording inside my jacket pocket. 4 men in reflective vests were standing along my shoreline. Orange flags had already appeared between the pines. One man held a laser level. Another sprayed a white line across the grass where Claire used to sit with her feet in the water. I stopped 20 yards away. Who authorized this? The youngest man looked toward the road. A woman stepped out from behind the survey truck. Vanessa. She wore a pale blue jacket, dark glasses, and the same expression she used whenever she wanted an illegal act to look administrative. "We're documenting a potential emergency access corridor," she said. "You're trespassing. We're verifying historical rights. On my property." Her smile barely moved. "That remains disputed." The crew leader approached carrying a clipboard. He showed me a photocopied easement agreement dated October 2004. My father's name appeared at the bottom. D. Mercer. The signature was wrong. Dad signed everything with his full name and a long underline beneath Mercer. More importantly, he had spent October 2004 recovering from open-heart surgery in Albuquerque. I photographed every page. Vanessa reached for the document. "You don't have permission to copy HOA records. You brought them onto my land." Her jaw tightened. I asked the crew to leave. They began packing without argument. That was when Vanessa raised her voice. "Daniel, lower the weapon." The men froze. I looked down at the orange-handled pruning saw hanging from my belt. "It's a saw. You approached contractors with a weapon." I walked down my own trail. She turned toward the surveyors. "You all saw it." Nobody answered, but I understood what she was doing. The survey had never been about measuring land. It was about creating witnesses. Vanessa lifted her phone and began recording. "Mr. Mercer, are you threatening Silver Ridge personnel?" "No." "Are you refusing emergency access?" "There is no emergency." "Are there firearms inside your cabin?" I looked directly into her camera. "There are legally registered hunting firearms locked inside a secured cabinet." Her eyes brightened. She had what she wanted. Not a threat. A sentence she could cut in half. The crew drove away first. Vanessa stayed beside the lake, staring at the water as if she already owned the reflection. "You could make this easy," she said quietly. "You could stop trespassing. 6 acres, Daniel. You would still have 42. My wife's ashes are scattered along this shoreline." That silenced her. For 1 second. Then she removed her sunglasses. "Sentiment does not stop development." The words were soft, almost kind. That made them worse. I stepped closer. "Neither does fraud. Once someone proves it." Vanessa's face changed. Not much, just a flicker behind the eyes. Then she smiled again and walked toward her Range Rover. By noon, a post appeared on the Silver Ridge community page claiming an armed property owner had chased surveyors from a designated emergency route. By evening, 3 residents reported hearing gunshots near my cabin. I had not fired a weapon in over a year. The following morning, a Silver Ridge security vehicle parked outside my gate. Its camera remained pointed toward the cabin for 6 hours. That night, another vehicle replaced it. The low engine hum leaked through the walls while headlights washed across my windows every few minutes. Vanessa wanted me tired, angry, careless, so I gave her none of it. I installed 2 additional cameras beneath the eaves, one above the workshop, and another high inside the pine overlooking the propane shed. Every recording backed up automatically to an encrypted server. I logged every vehicle, every visitor, every false complaint. Then I reopened my father's old fire trail along the northern ridge, clearing fallen branches and measuring the width between the trees. Vanessa thought I was preparing to fight her. I was preparing an emergency route in case something happened to the bridge. 3 nights later, one of my cameras captured her security guard standing outside my gate with a red toolbox in his hand. The security guard's name was Travis Bell. I knew because he had spent the previous month sitting outside my gate in a black Silver Ridge SUV, pretending to study traffic while photographing my cabin through the windshield. At 10:38 that night, he returned without the vehicle. The infrared camera caught him moving between the pines with the red toolbox in his right hand. His jacket carried the Silver Ridge security patch, but he had covered the reflective lettering with black tape. He stopped twice to listen. The mountain was quiet except for wind moving through wet branches and the distant rush of Miller Creek below the bridge. I watched from the workshop with the lights off. The camera feed glowed green across my laptop screen. Travis crossed the survey line, stepped over the low wire fence, and walked directly toward the propane shed. He did not search. He knew exactly where he was going. The toolbox opened with a soft metallic click. He removed a coil of yellow wire, 2 metal cylinders, and a clear plastic bag containing electronic components designed to resemble blasting equipment. Not working explosives. Props. Good enough for photographs. Good enough to frighten a deputy arriving before sunrise. He arranged everything behind the shed, then raised his phone. Flash. The first burst reflected off the propane tank. Flash. The second caught his face. Flash. The third illuminated the white Range Rover parked downhill beneath the trees. Vanessa sat behind the wheel. Her headlights were off, but the camera captured the pale outline of her face through the windshield. I saved the recording in 3 places. Then I called Deputy Aaron Cole. Cole had dismissed 2 of Vanessa's earlier complaints after checking the property records. He was broad-shouldered, careful with his words, and old enough to recognize when paperwork smelled wrong. He answered after 4 rings. Daniel, they're planting evidence behind my propane shed. Silence. I sent him a still image. His breath changed when he opened it. Do not go outside. I'm not planning to. Do not touch anything. I know. Another pause. Vanessa filed an emergency threat report this afternoon. What did she claim? I can't discuss an active assessment. Hostages. Cole said nothing. That was enough. I watched Travis pack the empty toolbox and begin walking back toward the road. Before leaving, he stopped beside my father's wooden sign. Mercer Road. Private access. He looked toward the cabin, then spat across the carved letters. Vanessa's Range Rover rolled away 30 seconds later. Cole spoke again. Keep your hands visible if anyone comes to the property. Don't open the door holding a phone, tool, or flashlight. The workshop suddenly felt colder. Is there a tactical response being considered? I'm telling you to be careful. His voice carried the strain of a man standing too close to a line he could not legally cross. I ended the call and contacted my attorney, the county prosecutor's intake office, and a state police evidence unit. I uploaded the full recording with timestamps, camera locations, and the original uncompressed files. Then I photographed every room in the cabin, every locked window, every firearm inside the secured cabinet, every toolbox I actually owned. I moved my father's deed, the temporary road agreement, and the original bridge records into a fireproof case beneath the workshop floor. At 1:12 in the morning, an email arrived from an address I did not recognize. The subject line contained 3 words. She knows you recorded. The message included a scanned copy of Vanessa's complaint. According to the report, I had detained a surveyor, threatened Silver Ridge families, placed explosives near the only access bridge, and promised that no one would leave the mountain alive. Attached were photographs of the objects Travis had planted less than 3 hours earlier. The report listed 4 witnesses. 2 names belonged to HOA board members. 1 belonged to Travis. The 4th was Emily Hayes, a young employee from the Silver Ridge Management Office. At the bottom of the email, someone had written, Emily did not sign this. I called the number attached to her personnel record. No answer. I called again. This time, a woman whispered before I could speak. "Mr. Mercer, they used my name. Where are you? I can't tell you. Are you safe?" A door slammed somewhere on her end. Emily inhaled sharply. "Vanessa said the raid has to happen before you reach the county records office." The line went dead. I looked toward the survey map above my workbench. Mercer Road ran from my cabin, across Miller Creek Bridge, through my land, and down to the highway. One road, one bridge, one buried reason Vanessa was willing to manufacture an armed crisis. At 3:56, the first helicopter crossed the ridge. By then, every camera was recording. The raid lasted 19 minutes. Felt longer. By the time Sheriff Nolan cut the restraints from my wrists, the helicopter had moved east and the rain had softened into a cold mist. Tactical officers stood across my porch holding rifles pointed toward the ground while the bomb squad examined the objects behind the propane shed. No one touched the red toolbox. No one looked at Vanessa. The lead technician emerged wearing a heavy protective suit and lifted one gloved hand. "Inert components," he said. "Electronic scraps, metal housings, commercial wire. Made to look convincing from a distance." Sheriff Nolan turned toward me. "Did you put them there?" I stared at him. Then I pointed toward the camera beneath the roof. "Watch the footage." We crowded into my workshop while rainwater dripped from black uniforms onto the concrete floor. The room smelled of wet nylon, gun oil, and the burnt dust from the front door lock they had blasted apart. I opened the original file. No edits. No cuts. The timestamp glowed in the corner. 10:38 p.m. Travis Bell crossed the survey line carrying the toolbox. 10:41. He placed the fake components behind the propane shed. 10:44. Vanessa's Range Rover appeared through the trees. Nobody spoke. Sheriff Nolan watched the recording twice. On the second viewing, his jaw tightened hard enough to show the muscle beneath his cheek. Deputy Cole stood near the door, saying nothing. He had warned me as far as he could. Now the evidence was speaking for him. Nolan ordered 2 deputies to locate Travis and secure the Silver Ridge Management Office. Then he called the county prosecutor from my workbench and used words I had not heard once during the raid. Fabricated evidence. False reporting. Potential conspiracy. Vanessa remained outside near her Range Rover, wrapped in a blanket someone had given her for the cameras. A local news crew had arrived before the tactical vehicles even crossed the bridge. That was not an accident. She had expected footage of an armed recluse dragged from a mountain cabin. Instead, their camera captured a bomb technician carrying harmless props in clear evidence bags. I walked onto the porch. Vanessa saw me and lowered the blanket. "You staged this," she said. Her voice was loud enough for the reporter to hear. I held up my restrained wrists. Red marks circled the skin. "You sent them here. I reported a threat. You manufactured one." Her eyes moved toward Sheriff Nolan, then toward the camera crew, then back to me. The calculation behind her face was almost visible. She stepped closer and lowered her voice. "You still have a chance to end this quietly." The rain tapped against the broken gate behind her. "What does quietly cost? Sell the lake parcel. Withdraw your accusations. Silver Ridge will cover the cabin repairs." I almost admired the confidence. SWAT had just torn through my home because of her lie, and she still believed this was a negotiation. "My wife's ashes are on that shoreline." Vanessa's expression did not change. "Everyone loses someone." That sentence ended whatever patience I had left. Not my control, my patience. I leaned close enough to smell the sharp floral perfume beneath the rain. "You should leave my property." Her smile returned, thin and artificial. "This road serves 400 residents. You cannot isolate yourself from the community forever. You keep calling it a community road. Because it is. Then you won't mind showing me the permanent easement." For the first time that morning, Vanessa looked uncertain. Only for a second. Then she walked back to her Range Rover and slammed the door. The vehicle rolled downhill across Miller Creek Bridge. The armored tactical truck followed. As its weight reached the center span, the bridge gave a low metallic groan. I felt it through my boots. Not loud, Not dramatic, just steel carrying more than it had been designed to hold. I looked toward the faded load limit sign lying face down in the ditch. Someone had removed it from its post. Sheriff Nolan followed my eyes. When was that bridge last inspected? I was about to find out. By noon, Travis had disappeared. The Silver Ridge office claimed Emily Hayes had resigned. Vanessa released a statement calling the raid an unfortunate misunderstanding caused by incomplete information. At 2:30, HOA security chained my lower gate shut and posted an emergency notice declaring Mercer Road under temporary community control. I cut the chain with bolt cutters. Then I placed the broken links inside an evidence bag. Vanessa had planted fake explosives, weaponized SWAT, and tried to seize my road before I could reach the records office. That told me the truth was not buried inside my cabin. It was buried inside the county archives. I loaded my father's documents into a waterproof case and drove downhill before Vanessa could send anyone else to stop me. The county archives closed at 5. I arrived at 4:36 with rainwater running from my jacket and the cut chain sealed inside a plastic evidence bag on the passenger seat. The building sat behind the courthouse, a low concrete box with narrow windows and fluorescent lights that made everyone inside look tired. At the front desk, an older clerk glanced at the waterproof case under my arm. Property dispute? Something like that. Her nameplate read Ruth Delgado. I gave her my father's parcel number, the road agreement, and the bridge identification stamped across the original construction plans. Ruth typed slowly, then stopped. Her eyes moved back to me. Mercer Road. Yes. She lowered her voice. People from Silver Ridge were here yesterday. The room seemed to narrow around us. Who? Mrs. Whitmore and an attorney. They asked whether the old subdivision files had been digitized. Have they? Not all of them. Ruth looked toward the clock. Then she locked the front doors. Come with me. The archive room smelled of dust, toner, and cardboard softened by decades of mountain humidity. Metal shelves ran from floor to ceiling. Property ledgers sat in gray boxes marked with faded county labels. Ruth found the Mercer file on the lowest shelf. The blue cloth tape around it cracked when she pulled it loose. Inside was the document Vanessa had spent 6 months pretending did not exist. The 1998 Silver Ridge Construction Access Agreement. Temporary use of Mercer Road. Heavy equipment only. 24 months. Revocable by the landowner. No permanent residential easement. No transfer to an HOA, successor developer, or future property owners. The agreement had expired in 2000. Silver Ridge had been using my road without legal access for more than 2 decades. I read the page twice. Then Ruth slid another folder toward me. You need to see this. It contained the original subdivision approval. The county had required the developer to build a second western exit before selling the 50th home. That road was supposed to connect Silver Ridge directly to County Route 14. The completion certificate showed it had been finished in 2001. I opened the attached map. The exit existed in ink. On the actual mountain, it ended against a granite wall. Who signed this? I asked. Ruth turned the page. Charles Whitmore, Vanessa's husband. At the time, he had been deputy director of county planning. The rain tapped against the archive room window. Soft, steady, like fingers counting down. Ruth pulled the bridge file next. Miller Creek Bridge had been approved for limited residential traffic and light service vehicles. No armored units. No heavy commercial convoys. No sustained traffic above 40 vehicles per day without reinforcement. Silver Ridge averaged more than 300. The last independent inspection had been 19 years earlier. A handwritten note from my father sat behind the report. Developer has removed load signs again. Refuses to fund reinforcement. Second road still unfinished. My throat tightened. Dad had known. He had fought them before his health failed. I kept reading. For 19 years, Silver Ridge residents had paid a monthly county access preservation fee. The HOA financial statements claimed the money funded bridge inspections, snow removal, and structural maintenance. The county had received nothing. My father had received nothing. The bridge had received nothing. Vanessa had collected money for infrastructure she did not own and never maintained. Then Ruth found the clause that changed everything. It was attached to my father's deed in plain black type. If use of the private access road creates an immediate structural or public safety risk, the owner may suspend ordinary vehicle access pending inspection, provided emergency services retain an alternate route. I thought of the old fire trail I had cleared along the northern ridge. Wide enough for an ambulance, strong enough for a fire engine, already mapped and photographed. Vanessa thought I had been preparing for a confrontation. I had unknowingly prepared the legal condition that allowed me to close her only road. I photographed every page and requested certified copies. At 5:42, Ruth stamped the final document. The sound echoed through the empty office. Thump, thump, thump. 3 official seals. 3 pieces of paper Vanessa could not rewrite. Outside, a dark SUV idled across the street beneath a broken lamp. Its windshield reflected the courthouse windows. I could not see the driver, but when I stepped onto the sidewalk, its headlights came on. I held the certified files against my chest and walked toward my truck without hurrying. Vanessa had called SWAT because she believed fear would keep me away from the records. Instead, she had forced me to find the one document capable of stopping every vehicle in Silver Ridge. And now I knew exactly what had to happen before sunrise. By 7:10 that evening, I had stopped thinking like a man defending his cabin. I started thinking like an engineer responsible for 400 people living behind a failing bridge. That distinction mattered. Revenge would have been easy. Responsibility required paperwork. I drove directly from the archives to the county transportation office, where Howard Pierce was still working beneath the blue glow of 3 computer monitors. Howard had reviewed mountain access projects with me for nearly 15 years. He trusted measurements, stamped drawings, and nothing else. I placed the certified files on his desk. He read the expired access agreement first, then the false Western exit certificate, then the bridge report. When he reached my father's handwritten note, he removed his glasses. Tell me an armored vehicle crossed this bridge today. It did. How heavy? More than twice the posted limit that used to be there. What posted limit? Someone pulled the sign out of the ground. Howard looked toward the window. Rain streaked the glass. The county parking lot reflected the yellow security lamps like sheets of dark metal. We need an independent inspection, he said. I already called one. At 8:02, structural engineer Laura Bennett arrived with a thermal camera, ultrasonic testing equipment, and a county bridge technician. Laura did not know Vanessa. She did not know me well enough to take my side. That was why I wanted her. We met at Miller Creek Bridge under portable work lights. Water roared below us, swollen from 3 days of rain. The wooden deck shuddered whenever a vehicle crossed. Beneath it, rust streaked the steel supports in long red lines. Laura crouched beside the eastern bearing and ran one gloved finger across a fresh fracture in the concrete. This did not happen tonight, she said. No, but the tactical truck may have accelerated it. She inspected the center span for 43 minutes. No speeches, no dramatic expressions. Only the soft electronic chirp of testing equipment and the scrape of her boots against wet steel. At 9:17, she closed the case. Ordinary traffic stops now. Howard issued the emergency closure order from the hood of his truck. The document suspended civilian vehicle access pending full inspection and reinforcement. Fire, ambulance, and rescue units would use the northern service trail under county control. That trail had once been my father's logging route. For 3 weeks, I had been clearing fallen trees, grading the worst ruts, and measuring the narrow turns. I had done it because Vanessa kept claiming I endangered emergency access. Her accusation had forced me to create the route that now kept her residents safe. At 9:46, the fire marshal drove the trail in a rescue vehicle. At 10:08, an ambulance followed. Both cleared it without trouble. Only then did Howard sign the final authorization. I sent copies to the sheriff, county attorney, school district, Silver Ridge Board, and every emergency agency serving the mountain. The notice was simple. Mercer Road closed to ordinary vehicle traffic at 3 a.m. Vanessa called before the email had finished sending. What are you doing? Following a structural engineer's order. You cannot shut down our access before the investor summit. That was the first time she admitted what mattered. Not the residents. Not the bridge. The investors. Silver Ridge was hosting a 2-day development summit. Buyers, lenders, and luxury hotel representatives were already staying in rental homes above the ridge. At sunrise, Vanessa planned to lead them down Mercer Road to view the lakefront parcel she still intended to take from me. You knew the bridge was unsafe, I said. I know you are trying to sabotage this community. Then build the western exit your husband certified 25 years ago. The line went silent. When she spoke again, the sweetness was gone. If you close that road, I will destroy you. I looked down at the certified deed beneath my hand. You already tried. She hung up. At midnight, 2 county flatbeds arrived carrying steel barriers, warning lights, and the prefabricated gate I had ordered after Vanessa's security team first chained me off my own property. The rain sharpened the smell of gravel, diesel, and fresh-cut steel. Howard's crew installed the barriers on the highway side of the bridge. Sheriff Nolan positioned deputies at both ends. Laura mounted the structural closure notice beneath a flashing red lamp. At 2:58, I swung the gate across Mercer Road. At exactly 3, the lock closed. One quiet metallic click. That was all. No explosion. No cheering. Just a lawful order, a private road, and a woman on the mountain who had finally run out of paperwork she could fake. 7 minutes later, Vanessa's white Range Rover came sliding down through the rain. Vanessa's Range Rover stopped 6 feet from the gate. The tires hissed across wet gravel. One headlight reflected off the steel barrier, throwing a hard white stripe across her windshield. She stepped out before the engine stopped running. No umbrella, no coat, just a cream blouse, black slacks, and rain flattening her blonde hair against her face. What did you do? Her voice cut through the storm. I stood beneath the portable work light with Howard, Sheriff Nolan, and Laura Bennett. The emergency order was sealed inside a clear case mounted beside the gate. I closed an unsafe bridge. You blocked 400 residents. No, ordinary vehicle traffic is suspended. Emergency access remains open through the northern trail. She looked past me toward the deputies. Arrest him. Nobody moved. The rain drummed against the roof of the county truck. Vanessa pointed at the gate. This is retaliation. Laura stepped forward. This is a structural closure based on an independent inspection. Vanessa ignored her. You planned this because of the summit. I planned for the bridge to fail. You expect people to believe that? Howard held up the inspection report. They will when they read it. The first shuttle van appeared behind Vanessa at 3:19. It carried 6 investors scheduled for the Sunrise Lake tour. The driver stopped, rolled down his window, and asked how long the delay would last. Vanessa turned toward him with a smile that looked painful. Just a few minutes. It will remain closed until reinforcement is complete, Howard said. The smile disappeared. More headlights came down the mountain. A catering truck, 2 black SUVs, a luxury coach carrying hotel representatives. Within 20 minutes, Mercer Road was lined with vehicles idling in the rain. Red brake lights glowed between the pines. Diesel fumes settled low over the bridge. Residents began stepping out to ask questions. Vanessa answered none of them. Then the news van arrived. Alicia Grant climbed out wearing a red waterproof jacket, followed by a cameraman carrying a light rig. Mrs. Whitmore, she called. Did Silver Ridge know this bridge had not passed an independent inspection in 19 years? Vanessa turned away. Alicia followed. Why were residents charged monthly maintenance fees for a bridge the HOA does not own? The crowd went quiet. That question landed differently. An older man near the front raised a folded billing statement. We pay $98 a month for access preservation. Another resident lifted her phone. My statement says County Bridge Maintenance. Howard looked at me. I opened the waterproof case. Ruth Delgado had prepared 20 certified copies before I left the archives. I handed them to the residents one by one. The expired access agreement, the false Western exit certificate, the county payment records showing zero maintenance funds received. Vanessa pushed toward me. Those documents are confidential. They're public records. You stole them. They're certified. Sheriff Nolan stepped between us. Back up. Her face changed. The polished HOA president vanished. What remained was a frightened woman watching control leave her body 1 inch at a time. At 4:02, I connected my laptop to the portable county display. The screen lit beneath the rain canopy. The infrared footage began. Travis Bell crossed my property carrying the red toolbox. A murmur moved through the residence. On screen, he arranged the fake blasting components behind the propane shed. Then Vanessa's Range Rover appeared downhill. Someone in the crowd whispered her name. Vanessa lunged toward the laptop. Deputy Cole caught her wrist before she reached it. Don't. The word was quiet. She froze. I played the next recording. Emily Hayes's voice came through the speakers. They used my name. Vanessa said the raid had to happen before Daniel reached the county records office. The rain seemed to stop. Not literally, but nobody heard it anymore. Sheriff Nolan nodded toward 2 state investigators waiting beside an unmarked sedan. They had received my files hours earlier. The bridge closure had not created the investigation. It had simply brought Vanessa to the place where the warrant could find her. One investigator approached holding a folder. Vanessa Whitmore, you are under arrest for conspiracy, evidence tampering, filing a false report, and obstruction of a criminal investigation. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. Then another vehicle rolled down from Silver Ridge. Charles Whitmore was behind the wheel. He saw the investigators, shifted into reverse, and backed into the catering truck. The crunch of metal echoed across the bridge. Residents turned toward him. Howard raised the forged completion certificate. Mr. Whitmore, we need to discuss the road you certified but never built. Charles gripped the steering wheel with both hands. That was when everyone understood. The fake SWAT call, the missing bridge money, the non-existent second exit, the lake Vanessa wanted. None of it had been separate. It was one machine, and every document I placed on that table removed another bolt. Vanessa looked at me as the investigators closed the handcuffs around her wrists. You trapped us. I shook my head. I closed a bridge. Behind her, the residents she had ruled for years were reading the truth beneath flashing red lights. By sunrise, Silver Ridge still had a safe emergency route. What it no longer had was a president. The bridge remained closed for 38 days, long enough for county crews to replace the damaged bearings, reinforce the center span, and install weight sensors beneath the deck. Long enough for Silver Ridge residents to discover what Vanessa had been charging them for. And long enough for the story she built around me to collapse under the weight of its own paperwork. The criminal case moved faster than I expected. Travis Bell was arrested 2 days after the road closure at a motel outside Grand Junction. He still had Vanessa's messages on his phone, photographs, payment instructions, a list of places around my cabin where the fake components would look most convincing. He accepted a plea agreement and testified that Vanessa paid him through a security consulting company controlled by her brother. Emily Hayes returned 3 weeks later. She had been staying with family in Wyoming after Vanessa threatened to blame the entire false report on her. Emily brought investigators a flash drive containing deleted board emails, altered meeting minutes, and copies of maintenance payments routed through companies that did not perform any work. The missing money totaled $684,000. Silver Ridge families had paid it over 19 years. Teachers, retirees, firefighters, young couples buying their first homes. Every monthly statement promised bridge inspections, snow removal, and emergency access improvements. The bridge had received almost nothing. The western exit had never existed. Charles Whitmore had approved the false completion certificate, then used his position to prevent later inspections from exposing it. Vanessa received charges for conspiracy, evidence tampering, filing false reports, fraud, and obstruction. Charles faced fraud, falsification of public records, and official misconduct. Their attorneys called the situation a misunderstanding. The state called it a pattern. I sat in the back row when Vanessa entered her plea. The courtroom smelled of paper, floor polish, and stale coffee. No helicopters, no rifles, no cameras pressed against the glass. Only the soft scrape of chairs as she stood before the judge. She wore gray. Her blonde hair was still perfect, but her hands trembled against the edge of the defense table. When the judge asked whether she understood the charges, Vanessa looked over her shoulder. She found me immediately. I expected hatred. What I saw was confusion. She still could not understand how the man she had called unstable had defeated her without shouting, threatening anyone, or breaking a single law. That was the difference between control and power. Control depends on people being afraid. Power survives inspection. The civil settlement was finalized 4 months later. Silver Ridge paid for the destroyed gate, the damaged cabin, my legal expenses, and the losses caused by the false tactical raid. The HOA issued a written public apology and withdrew every claim against my lake, cabin, road, and bridge. The new access agreement was 15 years. Not permanent, not free. Traffic limits were enforced electronically. Heavy vehicles required approval. Annual inspections were mandatory. Maintenance payments went into an independent county trust. Emergency services retained unrestricted access through the Northern Trail. And the final clause required Silver Ridge to complete the western exit Charles had falsely certified 25 years earlier. The residents elected a new board. Emily became records officer. A retired accountant named Martin Keller became treasurer. Their first public meeting lasted less than an hour because nobody spent 40 minutes praising themselves. I attended from the back row. For the first time, nobody called my cabin an eyesore. Nobody called my workshop dangerous. They called me Daniel. By October, Miller Creek Bridge reopened. I stood beside the new gate as the first school bus crossed beneath the green wait indicator. Children pressed their palms against the windows. The driver lifted 2 fingers from the wheel. Behind me, the old wooden sign still carried the stain where Travis had spat across my father's carved letters. Mercer Road. Private access. I sanded the wood, sealed it against the weather, and added 1 line beneath the original words. Used by permission. Protected by truth. That evening, I returned to the cabin and placed Claire's cracked photograph beside the fireplace. I never replaced the glass. The fracture across her smile reminded me that something can be damaged without being erased. Vanessa called SWAT because she thought fear would make me surrender my home. She believed the road gave her access and access gave her ownership. She never checked who owned the ground beneath it. Justice did not arrive with the helicopter. It arrived in certified files, inspection reports, camera footage, and 1 steel gate closing at 3 in the morning. People think a locked door is what keeps them safe. Vanessa learned the truth too late. Sometimes everything depends on the road outside.